ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
At a rural picnic spot in the dark, a young man suddenly disappears.
You could nearly say an alien took him away because he's just vanished.
When more clues from that night surface, something doesn't sit right.
It's nonsensical where the stuff is. It's been scattered.
I'm Rob Bergen. Join me as I investigate what became of Jack in the new season of Unravel.
Is it a murder? Is it someone just gone missing?
You know where my son is.
Search for the Unravel podcast on ABC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you believe that Elon Musk can establish a colony on Mars of 1 million people or launch data centres into space? If you do, you might be thinking of investing in SpaceX, which will go public this month. And if you don't, you might just gamble on Musk anyway, for fear of missing out. Today, Quinn Slobodian, co-author of Muskism, Guide for the Perplexed, on Musk's $1.8 trillion offering. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Quinn, you have written a book about Muskism, which apparently is the new Fordism. So he's the new Henry Ford, is he?
Well, we use that term because social scientists and others have found it helpful to say Fordism rather than just focus on Ford, because it makes you think about all the parts of the social world that are necessary for, Ford's factories to work. So when you say Fordism, you don't just think about cars, but you think about the nuclear family, the male breadwinner, the welfare state, mass consumption plus mass production. It becomes this whole ensemble of relationships. And our book tries to recreate that for Musk. Muskism is the promise of sovereignty through technology that's offered to nations and individuals, but it cashes out as greater dependence on often individual heads of enormous tech companies like Elon Musk himself.
Okay, so interesting. All right, so Quinn, given you really are a Musk expert, you're perfect to run us through Elon's next venture, that is to make his company SpaceX public. Now, he's filed the paperwork needed to undergo the initial public offering, so that is the investor prospectus, if you like, and its target value is absolutely massive, isn't it?
Yeah, so far it's projected to go public at $1.8 trillion is the most commonly cited figure, which will be the biggest IPO in history and will immediately make SpaceX the 6th or 7th largest company in the world by market cap. It would raise $75 to $80 billion right out of the gate for Musk himself to dispose of. So it's really a massive generational, really, moment for the corporate world and for the stock markets to see if it can sustain this, whether there will be kind of a halo effect that ripples out from it, or if it will trigger the kind of the beginning of the bust, actually, of this latest AI boom.
All right, so let's delve more in a moment into these figures that have been released in these documents. But this document, Quinn, it's part financial and it's like part science fiction, isn't it? Because throughout these pages, SpaceX reiterates that its ultimate goal is to establish colonies on the moon and Mars and have data centers in space. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, there's even some wilder rhetoric than that. I think the official mission statement of SpaceX is to establish a multi-planet civilization and to extend the light cone of consciousness outwards throughout the universe.
Wow.
It's something along those lines. It's also replete with these sort of embellished, sometimes AI-generated images of enormous football field-sized AI data centers orbiting the Earth and, rockets taking off for other planets, etc. So it really is a piece of science fiction in and of itself. In fact, the phrase, "we believe," I counted, is used 254 times in the course of the document. So it's very interesting to think of it as a piece of sort of speculative fiction in and of itself.
Yeah, and it mentions the light of consciousness almost a dozen times. And it isn't actually just a dream or theoretical, because it has massive financial stakes linked to it happening, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Particularly for Elon Musk.
It does. I mean, this is one of the hardest things in a way to talk about with Musk, because there's such a desire, I think, on the part of a lot of people who are critics or on the left, such as myself, to simply deflate his grand statements and say that he's never actually delivered on his promises. But in fact, he has delivered quite substantially on some of his promises. He mainstreamed the consumer electric vehicle. You know, if you had invested in Tesla 10 years ago, your stock would be up 1,800%. He's brought the cost of putting mass into orbit down by 90% over the last 2 decades. He's created a whole new sector of low Earth orbit internet satellites. And it's enough that you have the world's retail investors, and in many cases, the world's institutional investors, meaning pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, oil funds, all lining up to get a piece of SpaceX, even though, and this is an important part of the story, he has rigged the governance structure of it in such a way that nobody can depose him from his leadership. He's created a special class of shares, of which he has 85%, and it's only through a majority vote with that class of shares that he can be removed as CEO or chairman of the board.
Well, Quinn, let's have a deeper look at these figures now and what we've found out about SpaceX, which includes subsidiaries Starlink and XAI. Now, as you said, the valuation is $1.8 trillion. And there are people out there that think that is way too much. It's overvalued. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there really is only one revenue-generating part of SpaceX, which is Starlink. And if you read the SpaceX prospectus, it talks about the existence of 1 million satellites in low Earth orbit for both global internet provision, mobile provision, there's Starlink Mobile now, and of course, to put these orbital AI data centers up there. So that's the valuable part of it. But it's being used now to fund the loss-making parts of the conglomerate, because his AI company, XAI, which had swallowed X.com, the social media platform, earlier this year, and then was in turn swallowed by SpaceX, is losing $1 billion a month, or spending $1 billion a month, and is lagging far behind its competitors, its much better known competitors like Anthropic and OpenAI. And that's the reason that people are now sort of questioning the valuation of the company. Yes. People talk about price to earnings ratio. How much is the price of the stock versus how much does it make in a year? And in the case of SpaceX, it's 93 times what it makes in a year, which is already 15 times more than the average Nasdaq stock. So it's massively inflated, as you say. But in the end, the price of a stock is not determined by what you or I think of it, or even, people who have deeper knowledge of it, but by what investors are willing to pay. And this is this price that they can confidently say people will be willing to pony up, and they will be beating people off, right, from the doorstep to buy these stocks.
Yeah, because I've seen Musk referred to as the Pied Piper of Wall Street, who can summon everyday people to put money into his company. So do you think that is what will happen?
I mean, certainly this is the power that he has. And this is something we talk about in our book, Muskism, which is, I think, poorly understood, is his relationship to social media and the media in general. He was online so much and was able to build this sort of rabid fan base of people who hung on his every word. Since his purchase of Twitter in 2022, of course, he's now transformed the site so it's structurally designed to amplify and boost his message, and people who he then, deigns to give his attention through replies or likes or comments are boosted up the algorithm. So he actually has been spectacularly successful at using X.com as a way to create a kind of echo chamber in which his own genius is sort of endlessly ratified. And his strategy is very much, as you say, to draw in retail investors and then produce kind of momentum so that even when things happen, as just happened this week, a major Danish pension fund pulled out of any interest in the SpaceX IPO because they said this governance structure is crazy. We can't accept having absolutely no means of holding Musk to account as CEO. What Musk's wager is there will be enough, reply guys and fanboys that still remain such that his balloon of profitability will continue to inflate.
All right, well, Quinn, SpaceX and Elon Musk have got the ball rolling and will go public soon. Other AI companies, Anthropic and OpenAI, they could be following really soon, and we have never seen such massive offerings before. So how significant is this, do you think?
Well, I think the most interesting thing about it, sort of, if you take a step back, is how much this shows how the story of Silicon Valley and the tech sector has changed, right? Far away from this idea of libertarianism, right? The idea that Silicon Valley is a place of either actual or would-be libertarians. It's actually a story, as we describe it, of state symbiosis. So why is it that Musk can muster these kind of values? Why is it that OpenAI or Anthropic can be expected to have such high profitability? It's not really because they're going to provide a great product for average users. It's really because they're going to be so deeply integrated into the functioning of the government and into large firms that it will be impossible to function without them. How you make yourself that valuable is you make yourself indispensable to the everyday practice of government, what we think of as the sovereignty capacities of governments in particular, and then also the big enterprises. Because if you look at that SpaceX IPO again, it says that they're going to be, providing 80% of their services, not to individuals, but to enterprises and firms. And this means that a lot of this is just out of the hands of, average people. This new breakthrough technology they're promising, so-called artificial general intelligence, will, as they say themselves, render much of the existing workforce obsolete. So that scale of a bet is not something we've actually seen in our lifetimes, that someone comes along with any degree of plausibility and says the economy as we know it will never be the same again if we end up being right.
Gosh. And what about for Elon Musk and his legacy? There's a lot riding on this. Can he actually pull it off, do you think?
Well, I mean, the axiom in the investor community is never bet against Elon, right? Because even if one has a lot of questions about his mental health and ethno-nationalism and really the identitarian level of his anti-immigrant politics, the simple sort of brute message of the numbers in his companies are, highly confidence creating. And this is the blunt object against which any critique of Musk has to slam into. I think the best case scenario is one that resembles what happened in China, a place where Musk went in 2019 and built a gigafactory. And the Chinese were shrewd and canny enough to say, come and build your factory. You've done a good job with electric vehicles, but we're going to supply Chinese-made batteries for these electric vehicles. What has happened in the intervening years is that battery company that was started to put batteries in Teslas is called CATL, and it dominates the world lithium-ion battery market now. And BYD now has outpaced Tesla as the world's biggest electric vehicle seller. I think the best case scenario is this way that Musk can kind of direct the geysers of investment can be redirected somehow away from him personally and towards more socially beneficial aims. So I think the only way to think is not necessarily in terms of his abject collapse or failure, but a kind of a dialectic somersault by which somehow the interest in hard technology, the interest in especially green technology and solar and renewables, which I think are things he should be praised for, can somehow be hived off. So if we can somehow figure out how to winnow out some of this interest in futuristic technologies and turn it back to a better green future rather than the dark green future that his Cybertruck seems to be built for, then I think this is the outcome that we should hold out for.
Quinn Slobodian is a professor of international history at Boston University and co-author of the book Muskism, a guide for the perplexed. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.